Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Practice on Fire, the podcast. My guest today is my friend Laura Hatch from Front Office Rocks. I've met Laura a few years ago, first as a client and then through Practice on Fire. So, Laura, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are and why you're here.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm glad that you found Front Office Rocks a couple of years ago, and I'm super excited to be with Practice on Fire. My story is I have a background in human resources and organizational development. I was a salesperson, recruiter, IT recruiter, and married a dentist. And that's kind of how my path started into dentistry. We opened a scratch practice outside of Baltimore, Maryland in 2002. And I knew nothing about dentistry. I mean, I knew customer service, I knew systems, I knew management, I knew recruiting. I didn't know anything about dental. I know teeth numbers and surfaces and insurance codes. So I had to kind of figure it out because there's really no school for front office managers. So we did. We opened a practice on the East Coast, grew it on the East Coast, decided to move to San Diego because of the great weather. So moved to San Diego in 2007, opened another scratch practice in San Diego. Now, in San Diego, it was much different. There's a lot more competition here. 2007, the economy was, a lot worse than it was in 2002. But we opened a scratch practice in San Diego, now doing, $2.5–3 million. And I realized over the amount of years that I've had these practices that dentists need help with training. They need help with the front office. They need their front office team members to be trained. So about 5 years ago, I came up with the idea of doing an online training website. So it was kind of a hobby. It was just sort of a side idea that I thought I had. But much like you and a lot of other people decided that was needed in our industry. And now this is what I do full time. So I do front office training online. I speak. I'm speaking at Practice on Fire, which I'm excited about. This will be my second time. And really in hopes to try to help dentists with training, hiring and training in their front office team.
Awesome. So, you talk to a lot of dentists all over the country, all over the continent. What would you say is the common thread? What's the number one thing that dentists complain about that stresses them out, that frustrates them?
I'm going to say staffing. I mean, if the dentist, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you could just do dentistry all day long, you'd be happy. Most dentists would be. It's the staffing. It's the hiring the right people, motivating their team, trying to get the results out of their team members that they want, being afraid to discipline their team members or confront them about issues, and then firing. I don't know how many dentists I've talked to who, they tell me a horror story about this girl is awful and she's mean and patients don't like her and she never does what I say. And I say, okay, well, why does she still work there? Well, because we're like family. She's worked here for 15 years. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, so I think that the biggest frustration that dentists have is really dealing with the team members and dealing with the employees and trying to find the right employees and building the right team.
And why do you think that is? Because, I mean, dentists are smart people. We've gone to school for a long time. Why are we so bad at this aspect of the job? Or is this something common amongst all small businesses? You've had experience in other industries.
Yeah, I think it's bad. Yeah, you know what I think it is? It's the type of personality that I think dentistry attracts, and some of the other businesses that I've talked to and dealt with in the past. Confrontation isn't usually, your dentists are more about the technical skills, about the toys, about the little details going on in the mouth. They're not good at confrontation a lot of times. And I think a lot of it is because you take a lot to heart. I mean, we care about patients, you care about your team, and you think that if I have to sit down and talk to somebody at the front desk about, I don't know, being late one more time this week or messing up something that you told them to do, you're afraid that you're going to hurt their feelings or they're going to take it personal. But at the end of the day, you're a business owner. They work for you. I think a lot of dentists ultimately are working for their team. Like, they report to the team and cross their fingers and hope that the team's doing what they're supposed to, when really it should be the other way around. And I mean, not to pick on dental schools, but I just think dental schools are doing disservice. They're not teaching dentists how to hire, fire, train, manage. They teach you how to be a great dentist. They send you off into the world and they say good luck. And a lot of dentists open their practice thinking, all I got to do is figure out what logo to put on the wall, what procedures I'm going to do, who I'm going to buy my supplies through, and it's going to be easy. And it's not. I mean, we're dealing with people, and it can be challenging. I also think that, and I'm not saying this across the board, I'm not trying to knock, teach, the professors in dental school, but many of the professors in dental school don't have a private practice. They're not in private practice for a reason. It's the business part of it potentially, and they like the clinical and they're good at the clinical, but just because they're good at the clinical doesn't know how to run a business. And the other thing is, I don't think in dental school, you're thinking much about, boy, I'm going to have to hire employees and fire employees. You're thinking about, how am I going to get through the boards, and how am I going, so if you were to teach this in dental school, I think it would go in one ear and out the other anyway, because kind of like when people are listening to podcasts like this and they're on the internet looking, I mean, I have dentists sign up for Front Office Rocks on a holiday weekend when they should be out, at the pool with their family, and they're in the house stressed out about staffing issues. That's when you really pay attention, and that's when you really listen. So I don't know that it would work well in dental school anyway.
The other thing you said, we're talking about basically why dentists make crappy managers. And you think about how every other business works, right? Where let's say I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, and I have a great idea for a new gadget. I can have the idea as a technical guy, but at some point I have to hire somebody that can help me market this product, somebody that can help me fabricate it, distribute it, somebody that can help me run a sales team. That's just how business works. In dentistry, though, we've kind of fallen into the CEO role by default, right? Yep. We have the doctor title, therefore we're the CEO. Where really, if you look at the cross-section of dentists, what percent of them have any business being CEO of anything? Right. Not McDonald's, not a shoe store, not a multi-million-dollar business, which is what a dental office is. It's just, we just happen to fall into it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I agree. Well, and I was going to say, and that's probably, so many dentists focus on clinical CE because that's what you love, right? And so, and clinical CE is fine, but I do think you need to have a balance of management CE and training and team building and all the CEO parts too, because that's what's keeping you up at night. It's not, can I do a good crown, or how do I get the CEREC to do this or that? It's, is my crown patient going to show up? Did the girls up front close the patient? Are they going to pay? It's the business side of it. But dentists go over and over and over again to clinical CE, which is great, but I think you need a balance of some of the other training too, to make you a better, to acknowledge where your strong points are, to get better at it, and then know where your weaknesses are and be able to supplement that where needed.
Right. And as a dentist, I have some insight into why that's the case. Like, if I'm going to learn clinical CE, it's really easy to find. If I want to learn occlusion, I go to Spear. If I want to learn CEREC, I go to CEREC Docs. If I want to learn aesthetics, I go to Nosti or whatever. It's very, very cut and dry. But if I want to learn how to manage staff, like where do you even go? There's no resource that will teach you how to manage staff. It's not as easy. And when things are not easy for dentists, we just gravitate towards what is easy. And the mindset is always, I'm producing, $500 an hour, $1,500, $2,000 an hour. I don't have time to spend an hour with my front desk. That's costing me thousands of dollars each time. So forget it. Just sweep that under the rug and let me focus on making my production.
Yeah.
So what do you suggest for resources? If I want to learn how to manage staff, what kinds of courses can I take? Where do I look to find that information?
Well, funny you say that. I have a book that's coming out. That's a good plug. There's a ton of resources now. It really depends on how much, I guess I would say, how much training you need. Some people just need, some basics, like, for example, I know I've talked to you for a lot, and I know that you get the concept and you look for ways to help your team grow and communicate with your team and grow your team. Others are really far beyond that. I don't think that you need to go get a master's degree in business, but there's books out there, business books, there's articles, there's podcasts, there's Practice on Fire Live with great speakers. And the thing is to pay attention and take note and learn and implement not just the clinical stuff you learn, but the business stuff too. Because when you go back, it's great that you can place implants faster or do CEREC crowns, but if you can't communicate with your team on how to communicate that to the patients and how to get patients to accept the treatment, you're not going to be doing a lot of the new clinical stuff that you learned.
And what I've learned over the past few years is probably two things that have really helped me out in terms of managing staff. One is that there are not a lot of resources easily available to dentists, but there's a lot of resources available in other industries.
Right.
And if we're going to talk about hiring, that's one of your areas of expertise. No, there's no books on dental hiring.
Right.
But there's a million books on hiring. It's one of the most written about HR topics in the world. And dentistry is just a small business like millions of other small businesses in the world. So if you're able to open your mind to see what's happening in other industries, it really opens up so many more opportunities to learn.
Yeah. The biggest thing is you have to take off your dental hat and put on a business hat. You have to look at it. When you're in the mouth, when you're in the operatory, when you're the patient, you're a dentist. You got to be a dentist, be a dentist. But when you're not, get off Dental Town, get off, watching videos on how to do implants and go get some knowledge on communication, staff meetings, team building, goal setting. And then follow through with that, actually follow through and start to implement some of that. That's going to make a bigger change in your practice.
For sure. And I'll come back to that in a second. The other thing I want to add was the second thing that really helped me is understanding that there's only one reason to have staff, and that's to make my life easier. Somehow, some way, you got to make my life easier. And from a staff member's point of view, they have to understand that. They have to think that my job is not to answer the phone. My job is to answer the phone to get patients in the door because somehow that makes Mike's job easier. It always trickles down to somehow it's got to make my life easier.
Yep.
And when you have that mindset, then it becomes so much more clear who should stay, who should go, when do you need to hire somebody, when do you not need somebody, and what kinds of things should I be doing versus what kinds of things should I be paying somebody else to do.
Right.
And when we complain about HR issues, managing staff, all that, you've really got two options, right? One is you go and learn it. And I think, to be realistic, there's a small subset of dentists who have a desire to do that.
Yes.
Most of us just don't. But if we're not going to do it, then the other option is to hire somebody to do it. I mean, somebody's got to do it. It's going to be you or somebody else.
Yeah.
And something that Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach always says is, if you can write the check, you no longer have the problem.
Yeah.
So if you've got HR problems, you deal with it, or you write the check and you get rid of that problem. And dentists is just too cheap, right? They're not willing to write that check, which is crazy to me, because like you said, then it keeps them up at night. They can't enjoy their family, can't enjoy their weekends.
I think the thing that's missing, and I talk about this every time I speak, is the purpose. When your purpose is to fill your schedule, to make money, to pay bills, when that's your purpose, you're off. You need to have, I've met a few of your team members and they get it. I mean, there's a bigger purpose with your practice. There's a bigger purpose in my practice. And when the doctor's clear on where we're taking this, what we're here to do, you can attract the right people and keep the right people who have that same drive. If it's literally, I need my schedule filled tomorrow because, blah, 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 and it's not a bigger purpose, it just becomes not fun, and you attract the wrong people and they're motivated for the wrong reason. And then you're in a cycle, not fixing what's going on in your practice.
Right. So when you see these threads where it says, when should I have an office manager? What should I pay my office manager? To me, it's an impossible question to answer, because you could say, oh, you should have 6 full-time staff and collections of $1 million to justify it. No, I mean, to me, the answer is, well, what are you going to do, and what are you willing to pay somebody else to do?
Yeah.
You could have a $5 million practice with no office manager if you're going to do it.
Yep.
Or you could have a $500,000 office that needs an office manager because you're not willing or not able to do it.
Right. Right.
It's almost like, when do you need to hire a nanny for your kids? When you have a certain income and a certain number of kids, it's like, no, it's how much time are you willing to put in, and how big a check are you willing to write?
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
No, I said before that there's probably a small subset of dentists who have interest in learning this stuff. And one of the common complaints that I hear from my colleagues is they don't have any desire to be involved in the fluffy team building, hand holding, song singing, Tony Robbins style motivational speaker cheerleading stuff.
Yeah.
So what's your response to that? How can we get around that that mindset for dentists?
Well, there's two thoughts to that. I think that you have to understand that the best investment you make is in your team. I mean, your team is the face of your practice. They're the one who's representing you every day. And so and a lot of dentists don't invest in their team. I recently spoke for 2 days to office managers for a group, and half of them didn't come on Saturday. It was Friday, Saturday. And I found, well, why didn't half come on Saturday? And I asked the organizer of the meeting, and they said because the dentist didn't want to pay them for another day of work because they were, okay, like that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, there's somebody in your town that's going to help your office managers be better, but you didn't want to pay to have them work another day. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. And what would that have cost them?
Yeah, a
just
day.
That person's pay, right?
Yeah.
$25 an hour for your 8-hour day. Right?
Yep. So there's that. I think also that, employees aren't looking for like the big hoopla, got to rent a limo, take everyone to the spa. Like that doesn't have to happen. That'd be great. Those are great bonus gains and stuff. But, hey, you did a good job today. Or I really appreciated the way you handled that patient. Or thanks for doing this. Doctors are typically not super good at that. And employees, I mean, it's not always about the money. It's not always about, making more bonus. And so many dentists, I see this all the time on like Dental Town, people talking about bonuses and bonus structure. And okay, that's fine. But just when was the last time you told an employee they did a good job? And if you do that enough, you can also then have the time to sit down and go, hey, you're dropping the ball a little bit because you've been giving them enough, good feedback that it's okay to throw in some we need to work on things. But when you're not giving the employee any feedback, they don't have a purpose, they don't have a drive, they're looking to clock out at 5 o'clock and go home, and then that's why you have staff issues.
Right. And I think you hit on something really insightful there where there's an opportunity here for every single dentist, and especially the ones that don't like doing this type of thing. Because if you're the type of dentist who is, got rainbows coming out of your ass and super positive and just annoyingly happy, then, when you say thank you to somebody, it's almost like, you're kissing my ass again, or
yeah,
okay, just tone it down. You're driving me nuts. But when it's hard for you to do it, when it's not natural to do it, and that's 99% of dentists, and you do it, that's what makes it so valuable, right? Because your staff knows that you went out of your way to do something out of your comfort zone to show appreciation. And that's when it becomes so impactful.
Yep.
It's not fake. It's genuine. You really did something that you normally wouldn't do.
Yep.
So if every dentist out there just said, okay, every day I'm going to say thank you. I'm just going to say those words, thank you, to one person every single day. Like, what kind of difference would that make? Right. In the average doctor's day, how many doctors say thank you? Genuinely, not, thanks for passing me the Explorer, but genuinely, thank you. You did a really great job today. I'm happy that you did that for me.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of dentists who complain to me that say their team members, their employees don't appreciate them enough and what they do for them. Well, if you want appreciation, you need to appreciate too, and I'll get on team members and say, you need to appreciate your doctor. I mean, look at all that when I go to speak at CE and I'm like, look at how many of your doctors brought you here. And this isn't cheap to bring you to a meeting and pay for the travel. Make sure you thank your doctor, but you're going to get a lot more thanks and appreciation from your employees if you're doing it back to them.
Right. And I always tell people that the biggest ROI they can get when it comes to their own staff is just making a habit of writing a handwritten thank you card every once in a while. I mean, your ROI is infinite. And doctors will complain, oh, no, it's too hard. It takes too long. I don't have time for that. It's like, well, yeah, that's exactly why it's so valuable. If it was easy, it would have no value. The fact that it's hard is what makes it valuable.
Yeah. I think that the issue is, and just knowing after working with dentists for so long is, this is typically not the personality style of most dentists to be that bubbly, thank you, I appreciate you kind of person. And they save it all up for the patients, the operatory and the consultation. And by the time you walk out of there, it's kind of like, so it does take an extra effort. I mean, if it means you have to put yourself a reminder on your desk and say, just pick one person a day, or write a sticky note when you see something good happen. And then, don't throw it away until you tell the employee, or send them an email that night that just says, or a text that says, hey, great job. Follow through on your thoughts, because you probably think about it through the day. But you don't do anything. And then we save all that good stuff for the patients, which we need to do, but we need to do it for our employees too, because you want them doing it for the patients also.
Right. Even in my office, we got, I don't know, 50, 60 people. And sometimes somebody will come up to me and say, hey, oh man, that so-and-so did an awesome job today. I'm really happy with what you did. And I'll say, okay, well, why are you telling me? What do you want me to do? You go tell them. Like, why don't you go say that right to that person? That would have so much more impact. Versus, that's nice.
We do at the end of all of our staff meetings is we do that. We, at the end of the staff meeting, everybody gets a chance to say something good about themselves and then something about somebody else. So the reason I do that is something good about themselves is we don't get a chance to pat ourselves on the back enough, and it could be, I have like single moms who are going to school at night, who are showing up to work every day. And they're like, hey, I got to work every day on time this week or whatever. That's a great thing to acknowledge that they're, making sure that they're dedicated to us. And then on the flip side, we see each other do things all the time, but we don't stop and say thank you. So to be able to hear somebody say, last week I saw you with that patient, you did really well. It's just a way to acknowledge that we're all, looking out and seeing the best in our team members.
So what's your response to the typical doctor, the 95% of doctors that say, you know what happened to the days when I wrote your paycheck, you did a good job. And you just, did what I asked you to do. Like why can't it be that simple? Why can't we go back to those days? What's your response to somebody?
Was there ever days like that, do you think?
I don't know. They say there were.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like we have good, remember past relationships where you broke up and then you have the memories of the good times, not the bad times necessarily. I don't know that there was ever a time. I think that when things go well, you're assuming that people are doing their job and you just go home and you don't think about it. But when times are tough, when your practice isn't growing the way you want, when you're not hitting goals, that's when you start to feel the frustration. And so I don't know that there was ever a time that you didn't have to, communicate. That's literally the biggest thing I can tell dentists is if you're more than likely not communicating enough with your team. You're more than likely not telling them their purpose. You're not having good staff meetings. You're not running good huddles. You're not having one-on-ones with your employees. A 5-minute conversation to check in with an employee and just be like, how are things going? Not, when you have 50 and 60 employees like you do, you're going to have, tiers and structure. You'll have your, managers and then below, but it's not that hard to just go, how are things going for you? Can I do anything for you? Or I think you're doing a great job. But most dentists just don't think to do that. If you're probably not communicating enough. So I don't know that there was ever an easier time. I think patients or employees want to hear it. They want to know what you're thinking.
Well, you're right that when things are going well, a lot of problems just seem to disappear. And they don't really disappear. You just don't notice them as much.
Yeah.
So, again, on Dentaltown Facebook, you see questions like every friggin' month, what's your internet policy or what's your cell phone policy? It's like, you know what? If there's so many bigger problems in the office, and if your office was chugging along and humming and working smoothly, then who cares what the cell phone and internet policy is, right? It's just like you're picking on something that's so small out of principle to make a point. But is it really going to make any difference in the big picture? Is it going to improve your production or your collections or change your patient experience at all?
I get so frustrated right now. I'm hearing so much about millennials, how to manage millennials, how to hire millennials. And it's like, it's just a generation. They're no different than you know what, you give them a purpose, you give anybody a purpose. They understand the purpose. If you have the right team members, that's part of hiring. I think a lot of times you don't have the right team the right person on the right spot on the bus. What's the saying? And we're afraid to discipline. We're afraid to sit down with the employees. We're afraid for turnover. I have so many dentists who are afraid to let somebody go. but they're not doing their job well. Patients don't like them. Why do they still work for you? You know, and it's just, and it's kind of like this, you know, you started small and it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And next thing you know, you got gossip and you got drama and you got these girls who don't like those girls and you're hating going to work on Monday morning. And it's all because you didn't start with communicating from the beginning.
Right. And when you say the thing about millennials, to me, it's like a lot of people like to use that as an excuse.
Yeah.
Oh, there's drama. Oh, it's those damn millennials, right? They just don't care. They're just not motivated, like in the good old days.
Yeah.
But really, it's like, I mean, it's like saying, oh, I those blondes, they're so hard to deal with. Those brunettes are so much easier. It's just, I mean, they're just people, right? You got a heartbeat, a brain. You're a human. There's some basic tenets of dealing with people that are common across the whole species.
Yep.
Now, when you're talking about hiring, what do you think is the biggest mistake that dentists make in regards to hiring?
I believe that dentists wait too long. You wait too long to fire. You wait too long to hire. You wait, like you were talking about, when there's pain, you know, when you really need it. And then when you wait too long, if you're going to end up hiring somebody that's not a perfect fit for the position. You know, you have nobody sitting at the front desk. So somebody that breathes is better than having nobody sit there, which really is not the case. What you and I were talking about earlier is I think you should always be hiring. You should always be looking. You should always be ready to add to the team as you grow, and not wait until it's so late that you just have to get somebody to fill the role, because we put a round peg in a square hole, somebody that's not somebody we would have really liked, but we're making do. We hold on to them too long. I don't think we train well in the dental industry. I mean, you think about my first week in the dental office was just, you get thrown to it, you know, phones and computers, and here's the practice management software, here's our codes, go. So the training stinks. And then we're too afraid to fire. So it's really the whole thing. It's from beginning to end.
Right. So you said something about, waiting too long to hire. That was your first answer. And I think as dentists, especially this time of year, I don't know about your practice, but we get a lot of patients that come in and they call and say, oh, I need my toothache fixed. I need that endo done. And it's like, now, I mean, we got no time in our schedule. And now you're calling? Like, why did it take you so long to call? Like, didn't you know that this has been hurting you forever? Didn't you know that we've been telling you for the past 3 months this is going to happen? And now it's got to happen. And it's the same with hiring, where it's like you can say to doctors, like, why did you wait so long? Like, what is going through your brain that you're going to wait until the last possible minute, the couple weeks before Christmas, and now you're going to try to get this done? It's like they ignored all of the symptoms leading up to this and left it to the last minute. Just like
You've been watching that employee on your team get pregnant, and now she's about to go out and have a baby, and you have no replacement for her, and now you're struggling, you know, you're stressing to get somebody to fill that role.
Right. And we complain about our patients doing it all the time, but we do it the same thing with our staff. So, I mean, pregnancy is one thing, but what are the other symptoms that we miss leading up to knowing that it's time to hire somebody?
Well, I think that, I think that you should always be looking to hire. The symptoms are you're not communicating with your employees. If you're starting to get frustrated with one of your employees and you're not handling it with that employee, that's your first symptom. That's your first problem. Because, you know, let's say, for example, you've got a dental assistant who comes in late on Monday and you don't handle it and you don't say anything about it. And then she comes in late on Tuesdays. Well, now everybody on the team knows it's okay to come in late because you're not addressing it. You're frustrated because she's come in late twice, carrying a Starbucks coffee, saying it was traffic. You're not saying anything to her. So now you don't want to really work with her because you're frustrated. And then that's just kind of how it grows. Those are little things that can be addressed right away, but they're not. And so either you're going to end up firing somebody or they're going to quit and you're going to be stuck. So kind of knowing that somebody's on the path on their way out, or if you're growing, or if you're hearing from your team that they need help. You know, I know a lot of dentists look at the overhead. What's my overhead? What percentage should I be spending on payroll? But look at your growth and not trying to hold yourself back, but where can you grow with more on staff, with more team and more employees? So.
So with that first example you said of the person that comes in late, and then it's not being addressed, and it just builds up the tension. Eventually, somebody quits or somebody gets fired. But what's going to happen with the next person that comes in, right? It's like you haven't
Yeah.
fixed the problem. You're just
Yep.
trading one spot for another. But
Yep.
the root of the problem is the lack of communication, and that's the same
Yep.
thing going to happen with the next person.
Yep.
And eventually they're going to do something, and 2 years down
Yep.
the road, you can swap them out for somebody else, and it never
Yep.
ends.
And so there's that. So that's the doctor again learning how to be a better owner or leader. And then the other thing is I feel that so many times dentists feel they have to hire somebody with dental experience. Now clinically, yes, I get it, hygienists and assistants maybe, but for front office, you don't have to hire somebody that has dental experience. You can train them, but we do. We try to find somebody who has dental experience, and basically what you're doing is you're bringing that other dentist policies, procedures, and issues they had into your practice, which is now adding to the mix of problems. And then we're not training employees well. I mean, we're kind of throwing them to the wolves. And recent studies showed that a third of employees knew within the first 6 months within the first week if they were going to stay longer than 6 months or not. We have a huge turnover problem in the dental industry, but we're not fixing the problem. We're just continuing the cycle.
Right. I think those two things are definitely related that you said, the hiring within the industry and the lack of training. Because I'll tell you what happens from the dentist point of view. Um, if I was to talk to a dentist logically, I would tell them, okay, if you're going to run, let's say you own an appliance store and you sold fridges and stoves and you needed a front desk person. Would you only hire somebody who worked in an appliance store before?
Right.
No, you'd hire somebody with great customer service skills, duh. And then you teach them about fridges and stoves and whatever. It makes logical sense. But
Yeah.
then why don't we apply that to our offices? And I'll tell you the answer. It's because we don't want to have to deal with, oh man, I got to teach you the friggin' tooth numbers and
Yeah.
what stereo is and what a root canal is. Like, who's got time? I got to make $500, $1,000, $2,000 an hour fixing teeth. I
Yeah.
can't spend hours teaching Sally, who came from home hardware, how to,
Yeah.
what dental procedures are. So what's the answer? How do we get around that?
Well, that's the whole reason I started Front Office Rocks, is because I myself, as an office manager, if I had to explain what in and out of network benefits were for insurance, or how to answer the phone one more time to the new employee, I was pulling my hair out. So that's why I started this, is because I knew there had to be a better way. I mean, every time I believe you can find somebody outside of our industry. I prefer to hire somebody outside of our industry that has great customer service skills and knows how to sell, who's either worked in retail or worked in a bank or whatever, and bring them in and teach them the dental. And so that's really how I get around it. And I like your analogy about the appliance store, because it's completely the same. I mean, I think dentists just think that they need to hire somebody with the dental experience. And honestly, what you're doing is you're bringing in people that have dental, but may not be good at selling or customer service. And you're overpaying, because when you do that, you're paying for their experience, when really you could have probably started somebody a lot less and trained them and molded them into the employee that you wanted.
Right. It's simple supply and demand, right? There's much fewer people with that qualification. Therefore, the cost goes up. And
Yep.
to me, putting that qualification that you have to have dental experience is as stupid as saying applicant's first name must start with M.
Yeah.
It's just a random criteria that really has no bearing on their future job performance.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I've had plenty of people get hired and say they have dental experience. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? They get in, they don't know anything, right?
Yeah.
Dental experience.
Yeah.
You give them a test or something to test their level of dental experience, because it really means zero.
Yeah. It's like that. Have you ever heard people say patients have low dental IQ?
Right.
I'm like, I've never seen the dental IQ test. Of course, patients have low dental IQ. They didn't go to dental school. They don't know, right?
All they got to know is tooth hurts.
Yes,
I want to look
exactly.
better. That's what they have to understand. It's our job to have the dental IQ.
The other thing to note too is that the way training goes right now in dental offices is a lot of times we get our new employee in and we sit them down with our most senior employee or somebody who does that job, and we say, show them how you do your job. Just because somebody on your team is good at something doesn't make them a good trainer. And and what happens is we take this new employee and Susie shows her one way, and then Julie shows her a different way, and then somebody else says, no, don't do it that way, we do it this way. And there's just this confusion and lack of good training. And new employees, they need to be able to produce, they need to be able to help, they need to feel like they're contributing. And sitting in a front office of a dental office, putting them on the phones before you've even trained them is like some of the worst things that we can do to a brand new employee. So my mission is to try to help dentists realize, at least in the front office, you don't have to hire with dental experience. We can train them on dental and then give you the opportunity to train them well from the beginning, because that's going to help you with better long-term, stable employees that are going to help contribute to your practice.
And you're right, because this is how every other industry in the world does it. And it's like, why are dentists so special that we have to do it our way? We think this is the best way. Like, what industries were you in before? What did you say before?
I was an IT recruiter, so a technical recruiter. I was an admin recruiter. I was in outside sales and human resources.
Right. So let's say you've got an organization that's looking for a sales position. They're looking for a salesman. Most companies that are hiring salespeople will not let their salesperson talk to a customer for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
It's critical. Like, you can't mess this up.
It's something like Chick-fil-A. I think they have to go through like 3 months of training before they can even, they're serving chicken nuggets.
Right.
And they're not even allowed to, at Pet Boys, they have to do a certain amount of training before they can even go on the floor. They have to do a certain amount of training every month to keep their customer service up. We don't do that.
It's like, oh, welcome. Here's your first day. Just sit beside Sally and just do what she does. Just learn by osmosis. That's
and think about, we endodontics and in and out of network and prophylaxis and code DO whatever and tooth number and service. It's like we speak a different language, and a lot of doctors will test the employee out on the phones. It's the worst thing you can do. You're paying for that phone to ring. The last place you want to test out a new employee or try them out or start them without being fully trained is on the phones. It's just the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. When you've got a new staff, and if they're going to talk to somebody in person, that patient who's standing there is much more tolerant of somebody in training than somebody on the phone. People on the phone are very impatient, right? They don't understand that this is the new girl and she looks nervous and, she's obviously, got the senior person beside her. They don't understand that. But in person, patients are very understanding. They go through this all the time at every business they go to, trainee on their badge. They understand and you want to help that person. So for sure, it's crazy the way that we train people. Now, I'll tell you what the objection from dentists is. I'm not Pet Boys. I'm not Chick-fil-A. I don't have an HR manager. I don't have, somebody that can train full time. I can't afford to do this. I need somebody to be up to speed now. Yeah. Not 6 months from now. So what's the answer? What's your response to somebody that has that objection?